All right, so this is your co-host, Michael Funky, here on The Point, Monday Point, and we've got Greg Delgado here in the studio with us. Greg is the organizer, the local organizer for CAUSA, the Immigrant Rights Coalition in the state of Oregon. Greg's a good friend of KPOV. He helps out during our pledge drives. He's been on many of our shows. Welcome back to KPOV, Greg.
Thank you. It's always fun to be here.
It's great to have you. So let's get right into it. You have an event called the Walk for Citizenship coming up on, September 15th, 16th, and 17th from Madras to Bend.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, this is kind of exciting. We're looking at a campaign that we're working on to start walking from Madras to Bend to show that our communities are in support of a fair and just immigration reform. We'll be starting at the Catholic Church in Madras, where we'll be walking through town down to a KOA for the first night, and it'll start at the Mass on Sunday, the 15th, and then from there we'll walk to a KOA campground at Haystack, and then on into Redmond the next day, where that evening we'll have a potluck and a prayer session at the Catholic Church in Redmond. And then from there, we'll start sending off our teams. We'll do relays of different organizations who are helping to support this march. And we have legs for there going on, sponsored by people like the Immigrant Law Group, AFL-CIO, United Food and Commercial Workers. We are going to have different legs of this march being sponsored, and it'll go all the way into Bend, where we're going to turn in signatures to Congressman Walden of letters of support. We have over 70 business community members that are signed on letters of support, and hundreds of local community members who support this. And the goal here is to show that we in Central Oregon want a path to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented people in America. And we're asking our congressman to take that into consideration and to move forward on this. As we know, Congress has been a little stalemated on this issue, so we're just trying to raise awareness and to try to show that the community wants this and the community supports this.
So one question I have is, why is this important? What can we do? I know immigration is a hot button issue right now, but the politics of it really masks the humanitarian aspect of it. And we want to. My question is, how are we highlighting both sides of the issue there?
Well, that's basically what this march is about, is showing that this is a humanitarian issue. This is about people and families and communities being destroyed and torn apart by this immigration issue. We tend to make it a political issue or a financial issue, but the truth is our economy needs this and our communities are supportive of this. And I think that's why we need to really bring the message. Let our political officials know that the communities are in support of this and that this is something that affects families and people in everyday communities. And that's where we elevate that voice, because that's where the movement should be.
And when we talk about the impact on families, what we're talking about is very real situations that exist here in Central Oregon and across the country where, for example, parents have been separated from their children because the parents have been deported, and their children are left to fend for themselves, or their friends and people in their churches and stuff who have to rally around them. It's been a real serious issue in terms of families just being divided and split up.
Yes, it does. It tears families apart constantly. What we're seeing is one of our key community leaders here is a woman named Liliana Ramos, who got deported last year, and her 3 children are here by themselves, being supported by the grandmother, who just kind of gives them a roof over their head. But these 3 children now have to work. One of them just graduated high school, and the other one had to stop going to college in order to support the mother who was deported to Tijuana. So the youngest is still in middle school. So here's a family, just one example of what happens, how we destroy families in this type of issue. And there's so many other stories. These stories come out constantly that parents are being deported and children are being left without mothers and fathers, and also children who are brought here by no choice of their own, who are facing the fact that they have no future, or they feel that they have no future. That disparity is very strong and is very relevant in our community.
Yeah, and so Congressman Greg Walden, you're going to present a petition to him, and you want to talk about and you said earlier you were talking about fair and just immigration reform. Can you give us a sense what would you say is involved in having fair and just immigration reform in this country?
Well, there's a lot of pieces to that. What we'd like to talk about mainly is we have a system that is broken right now. It takes over 10 years just to get through this process. That's part of it. That is not fair. That is not just.
And people don't know that when they say you just get in line. That's an incredibly long line.
Yeah, that's an incredibly long line, and we're talking about 11 million more people to put in that line. Does that mean that they're ever going to get a path to citizenship in this process? Probably not. So that's part of it. The other part is how do we keep children, by no choice of their own, to stay in this country and be valuable parts of our community since they were raised here, even though they didn't come here by their own choice. Also, people who are hardworking, who came from Mexico and brought their families and have been here and paying their taxes and working very hard, how do we respect them and their dignity? And also look at the big picture. What are the root causes of this immigration? Those are one of those things that we never talk about on the issue. And how much did we have to pay, as a country, have to be responsible for this forced migration?
And I'm glad you touched upon that, Michael's question, which was what is free and legal immigration. Now, when you said, when you talked about standing in line, I was one of those people. I'm not from Latin America, of course. Mm-hmm. I'm from a different country, but I stood in line for 4 or 5 hours. In the rain to get this U.S. visa. And if you ask, and just playing devil's advocate, now people will say, hey, isn't it unfair that at least these millions of people, they stood in line and they got here this way? Of course, I was fortunate to have that opportunity, but I understand that. How do you counter that argument from skeptics?
Well, that's part of the system being antiquated and a broken system. It only allows for a certain amount of people from any specific country. And if we look at things like free trade and what it did to our trade with Mexico and how it forced this migration. NAFTA was forced 20 million people to migrate. That wasn't on the NAFTA treaty. That was not even negotiated. And now we have this flood of people coming from Mexico that we don't even want to address that we have any responsibility over trying to resolve this situation.
So, or in a national sense, do you think there's a movement bilaterally, politically, between the United States and Mexico so that the country's economic strata changes? That's what basically drives immigration, isn't it? One economy is
disparities.
Yeah,
the disparities.
Yeah. So, on a broader level, do you think there's more a movement towards that?
I think we have to look at it more carefully. I think we're trying to do the same thing, repeating ourselves with like the Pacific Free Trade Agreement that they're trying to pass now. It's really causing the same thing over on a tenfold level. So we're not really addressing the economic disparities and how we take advantage of other countries when we talk about free trade or whatever they want to refer to as that. But on the other hand, also, we know that the border crossings, it's a militarization of our southern borders that's creating this huge money wheel of billions of dollars that are being created for protection of our borders under national security. Immigration is not a national security issue. Immigration is an economic issue, and we're not addressing it as such.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for people to understand that it is U.S. foreign policy, trade policy like NAFTA, when people that fled Central American nations during the wars down there that were partially funded or largely funded by the U.S. So that our foreign policy actually creates, it's kind of, our tax dollars that pay for our foreign policy create the immigration the situation that exists. I mean, people, and you and I have talked about this before, I mean, people don't want to leave their families and go thousands and thousands of miles to get what is essentially maybe a decent job for them, but not such a decent job in the economy that they're moving into. And it's basically the foreign policy. So we pay for that tax dollars we pay for the foreign policy and the militarization stuff, and then we pay again. Everyone that's in the country pays again. Well, but
yes.
Yeah. So but we need to move on. I think because part of this is part of this national. In addition to the march, and we'll get back to that. But you talked about a national day of action that's coming up, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, on October 5th, there's going to be a National Day of Action, and over 1,100 cities across the nation, 40 states, already have signed on to this National Day of Action. This is telling Congress that we want this to go to a vote. We need them to move on this, and we're going to be pushing on a national level. Part of that national campaign is Oregon Congressional District 2, which is Congressman Greg Walden and our district here. Our congressman is the fourth most powerful Republican in the nation, and we want him to know that the city supports an immigration. He has come out and said our system is broken. He has not come out with a statement, but he has come out in support. So what we're doing is telling him that the city, the community wants this, and we're doing mobilizations throughout the state. We're on weekly calls doing mobilizations in Hermiston with the farm workers over there, and also the farmers. We have the huge agribusinesses are in support of this immigration reform. I was just down there a few weeks ago where they signed on letters of support saying we want a fair and just immigration. We don't just want workers to come and work and go away. They want workers, and they want the families to stay and the communities to grow. Because what we're finding in these small agribusinesses communities is that there's large Latino populations who are making the communities, reviving communities and thriving communities with new markets and new businesses and new community members. So they're very welcoming, and we just got to raise awareness around that issue. Southern Oregon has been remarkable about mobilizing around Walden and asking him to start to begin a dialogue around this too. So we're moving across the state, across the Oregon Congressional District, to make sure that he hears the voice and that it's not just Central Oregon. But here what we're doing is just saying we as a community, all of us are rural communities. There's 3 communities that we'll be stopping at, and we want to make sure that we know that we're united and we're here in support of a comprehensive immigration reform.
And so the Walk for Citizenship, listeners, September 15th through 17th, and the National Day of Action on October 5th, and people can still join this Walk for Citizenship, correct?
Yes, they can.
And so how would they go about doing that? How do they make the contact to make that happen?
You can contact me, or Reina is on the flyer there. Let me see her phone number. You can contact Reina at 971-240-7414. That's Reina Lopez at 971-240-7414. We're going to be taking, what we did is we created a march that is opening, inviting to all our communities. Not everybody can walk for 3 days. There'll be some dedicated hardcore people walking. I have Mecha students from the coast coming, from Portland coming up here to do the 3 days of marching. We have, walking, we have lots of community members doing that. But we'll also hold a rally in Madras at the Mass, and then we'll walk through town, do a small mile march in support. And then when we get to Redmond, that next day, we will be walking through Redmond from the church and having a potluck dinner there as well. And so you can call and ask for any information you want. And in Bend, we're going to have a rally starting at Greg Walden's office. And then from there, we're going to walk through town to the Trinity Episcopal Church, where we're going to have a conversation or just a little prayer session with the church. Because last March, we started the March for One Oregon bus tour there. And the night we started it, there was a fire at that church, which burnt that church, as everybody in Bend knows. But we are just going to go back and just go back to the church where we started all of this. And then after that, there'll be a celebration at the Ola local restaurant where we're going to be just kind of recapping the day's events. So there's a lot of entry points, and you're welcome to do one piece, all of it, some of it, whatever you want. We just want anybody who supports this needs to come out and show that Central Oregon is united around this issue of immigration. And we ask anybody who is around to take it consideration and be a part of this.
And CAUSA is at the Social Justice Center here in downtown Bend. That's 155 Northwest Irving Street. And your phone number, Greg, there at CAUSA?
I can be reached at 541-390-6213.
Say that again?
541-390-6213.
Thanks a lot, Greg Delgado, for coming in. We really appreciate it. Anything else, Rudy?
Absolutely. I mean, I really support this issue because I'm an immigrant myself, and I understand both sides of the issue as to why people who are opposed to it are talking about, criminals. They talk about criminalization of the system, how a free entry can, make terrorists or whoever enter the borders. And I also understand the aspect of families who are already here. How do we take care of that? So it's a tough issue. I completely.
But immigrants built this country.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm
and
sure.
Will continue to build this country.
Well, we got to start looking for a solution instead of arguing over it. We got to get collectively say, hey, what can we do to fix this situation? This is many millions of people are suffering over this. 1,000 people a day are being deported. Right. That's a lot of families being destroyed on a daily basis. So we got to start talking about this and get this moving forward.
Absolutely.
And Congress needs to be the first one to take that step right now.
Right on.
Absolutely. Thank you once again for coming in studio and talking about this really important issue.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Always good to see you.
You too.